Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Wednesday, the 22nd of June, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. Let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here. Okay, they switched my page. UN food chief have refugee meal rations as global hunger crisis worsens. So, United Nations food chief has cut the meals in half, the rations. They were already rations to an awful lot of these people as global hunger soars. They don't have the food to feed families and stuff, And who got us to this point where a good chunk of the world's population now is actually going to be starving? Who's got us to this point? Is the world leaders, the decisions that they've made. And the reason why these decisions that they made have got us to this point is because in the decision-making process, the world leaders out there are only interested in money and power, and this influences their decision-making ability the whole way. And COVID, was something that come along out of nowhere practically, and it's swept through the world, and they made decisions, they said, to save lives. Well, let's put a scale right now and weigh the amount of lives possibly saved by the decisions that they made during the COVID era. Let's weigh it against the amount of lives that are at stake during this hunger crisis. There's absolutely no comparison. I mean, if you take it into consideration worldwide, all the people that died with COVID and put them all together, okay, it would pale in comparison to the people's lives that are at stake right now, possibly at tens of millions, perhaps even hundreds of millions of people that could actually starve to death. This is how severe. In fact, I think it's actually, I don't think they're telling us. I think it's an awful lot more severe than they're saying. I think that the world is only producing about maybe 60 or 70% as much food as it was producing just a couple years ago. And the reason why is fertilizer prices are going up, so you're using less fertilizer. And it's a known fact. If you use less fertilizer on your crops, you're going to have a smaller crop, maybe by 30% or something like that. So 30% less crops. Okay, you got weather phenomenon that's coming out of nowhere. And, you get a giant hailstorm and you got to field of wheat. Do you know what that hail's going to do to the wheat? It's going to pound it all down to the ground. How much are you going to harvest then? Same way with corn or any other crop. You get these giant hailstorms. It can destroy a crop. And we haven't dealt with the harvest season yet this year, which might be pitifully small. And different countries are realizing this now. What they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're not going to sell our wheat into the market. We're going to hold it for our own people. And when the starvation starts to hit worldwide, different countries are going to get greedy for their own people. And we're just all going to sit back and watch, because it's coming, where we're actually going to see mass starvation in the world. And who's to blame for all of this? The same ones who are responsible right now for trying to march us into World War III. And, I'm going to tell you, it's going to go, they're squeezing the people. All the people on the earth are getting squeezed right now. Financially squeezed is a big one. Not just hunger squeezed or anything like that. Not just food insecurity, but financially squeezing you so that your wages are not keeping up with the cost of inflation and so on. Squeezing you tighter and tighter. Now, it's going to come to a point where one of two things is going to happen when the people get squeezed and constrained to a certain point. One of two things is going to happen here. One of the things is the people will turn on each other. That could happen. Or maybe the people will sit back and say, hey, they'll take note. Who caused all this? And maybe they'll figure out who's causing it all, and then they'll turn on the ones who are causing it all. So it's one of those two things that will happen. Now, if the people just turn on one another out there and cause mass confusion because they're hungry or whatever, they just don't know who's responsible, and if these ones who are responsible can stay hidden from view, or create some sort of narrative where they make it like they're not responsible, or maybe start a war to divert people's attentions away from their responsibility, then, and things could escalate out of control, and quite seriously, we could be looking at a world where, heck, if that happens, if the people turn on one another, instead of tackling, I should say, the source of the problem, if the people turn on one another, then quite seriously, over the next number of years, the human race could go extinct. Because the source of these problems is just going to keep on exacerbating and creating the problem worse and worse and worse until more and more people just cannot survive on this planet. And if you think that's an exaggeration, what I'm saying, it's not. Because they're building nuclear weapons as fast as they possibly can right now. China's into full gear production, so is Russia, and so's the West. And what do we have here is we have a division between East and West. Half of the planet's on one side, and they're over there, and they got their fists waving at the other side, and half of the Earth on the other side's got their fists waving at the other side, and they're right ready for a big battle. They're right ready to take the people into a big battle. And so if the people are willing to go there, because that's where they want to take us, and the people squabble with one another instead of figuring out, hey, who's really responsible for this, is the less than the 1% out there. If they can't figure that out, and if the less than the 1% that's really causing all these problems is allowed to continue to their ultimate end and goal, well, they're just, this planet, let's put it this way, some aliens will come along, 100 years from now. And they'll come down in their little flying saucer and land on the ground, and they'll step out of their flying saucer and they'll have their little tricorder with them like they have in Star Trek. And they'll look at the numbers and they'll say, oh my gosh, this planet is hopeless. There's so much radiation everywhere. What did they do to themselves? Look, there's skeletons everywhere. What did they do to themselves? There's nobody left. We got to get out of here too. It's just too much for us. We can only stay for 10 minutes, or we're going to be too much radiation. Let's get out of here. And they hop back in their flying saucer, and they shut the doors, and they go up into the sky again. Is that what we want for our planet? A planet where the only thing that can survive is possibly mutants, with animals running around with two heads and stuff like that, and snakes and lizards and stuff. That's the only thing that's left. And the planet is just boiling with radiation. Is that what we want? Because that's what the world leaders got planned for us all. And their almighty glory that they want for themselves, and they're just both sides are setting up right now for this great battle that they plan on they'd like to have, so that they can fight over control. But what do they represent? All the people out here. We got all these people out here, millions and millions and millions of people. And do the people want this battle? No, they're frightened of it. They don't want it. They just want peace. and security for their children, raise their children in peace and security. They don't want this. It's the world leaders that want it. And what do they represent? A percentage. If you took all the world leaders and grouped them together, you could put them all in one gymnasium compared to the amount of people on Earth. It's like not even 1%. They don't make up 1%. They make up about 1/100th of 1%. But they make all the rules, and they're the ones that are ordering. Hey, get out there and open that factory up and get to work. We need to build these newest, latest atomic weapons that are 10 times more powerful than the old ones we used to have. And where are they getting the funding? Well, they're stripping it off of us. And that's why all of us are getting so poor so quick. We're just going to sit back, people of Earth, and take it. Or, when we really get squeezed tight, are we going to attack one another? Because if we do, the world leaders got plans, and if we let them get to the end of this goal where they have these plans, well, like I say, it's going to be the planet that's so much radiation that you can't survive on it. And the world leaders, they don't want this either, but it's the way that their brain functions. They just think of two things: money and power. And when they get full with riches, when they're so rich they don't know what to do with it all, then they just want power. They want to dominate all the world. They want to move forward with their quest. This is how they are, world leaders, and us, the people. I mean, we're the ones that's going to be cooked. They've been slowly boiling us for a long time, but they're going to turn up the heat big time, So anyway, these people, they can't eat here. Let's take a look at the silver price today. $21.47. Cryptocurrency today. We're looking at 896 billions. 20,466 is the Bitcoin price today. 20,466. So it has managed to get back up above 20,000. You could have a person out there right now who has some Bitcoin, and the thing is, I mean, they could sell a Bitcoin, get 20,000 for it right now, and they might be able to buy, if they're successful, they might be able to buy it back for half the price later. I mean, it's just we might be looking at something that's going to lose a lot of its value. I'm just basically what I'm saying. I mean, this is not over. This is not over until the Fed throws in the towel. And we're looking at huge drops in the markets coming up and everything, But one thing about gold and silver is there's a mining production cost associated with it. Well, there's a mining production cost associated with Bitcoin, but it's not near as high. Right now, it's probably about $7,000, Whereas silver, the mining production cost right now must be up around $20 for an ounce. And so they're a lot closer to mining production cost. Even still, Bitcoin right now is still probably quite a bit above mining production cost at 20,000. So the profit margin there is quite a bit higher. Basically, I guess what I'm saying is Bitcoin could probably go down to about $10,000, and the miners only cost them $7,000, and they'd still have a small profit margin. But if Bitcoin went down to 6,500, it'd probably be under the cost of mining production. There's an awfully solid floor, a heavy support for Bitcoin at around 6,500. I mean, I don't think it's going to break through that. But then on the other side, looking at this on the other side of what's going to happen after the Fed capitulates, Well, gold and silver that's when they're really going to skyrocket. I think we're going to lose supply at that point. I think there's going to be too much demand, especially for silver. I don't think you're going to be able to buy any physical after the Fed capitulates. And the Fed, I say we're 2/3 of the way toward the Fed capitulation. They're already starting to, some of them are starting to talk just a slightly more conciliatory tone from the Fed, just ever so slightly. Yet they're still very strong in this whole thing about fighting inflation. But that's going to shift as the markets go down and as they don't see a bottom and as they can't deny, I mean, you got them right now, this administration completely denying that there's even going to be a recession. They're like, it's not assured that there's going to be a recession sort of attitude. Not assured it's going to be a recession. We're already in a recession and they're heading toward a depression. When they can't deny it anymore. When it's right in everyone's face, and they have to finally admit, okay, the markets are down now. The markets are like 24,000 on the Dow, and we're seeing all these problems, and people are starting to lose. Companies are starting to go bankrupt and everything else. Now we say, okay, we're in a recession. That's when they're in the middle of a deep, dark depression. And so then they'll start to stimulate again. Because then the numbers will say, hey, we can't keep this going. Anyway, Dow Jones right now is just holding above 30,000. Down 318 on the day so far. I'm going to tell you what. It shows weakness in this bear market rally. Only lasted one day, and they've lost most of their gains the very next day. Shows quite a bit of weakness in the markets. Now, what I'm going to say is as the markets get down lower, these bear market rallies will probably get a little bit bigger. They'll have more room to run to the upside as the market bleeds out more. We're in the early stages of all this, Taking a look at crude oil. Crude oil has suffered a significant drop in price today of 7.83%, basically 7%. 7.15% drop. That's a big drop in crude. Move index today, 138.91. I can't see any other thing except that'll have to translate to the price at the pump. The fact that crude oil dropped 7%. Will they give us a 7% break, though, at the pump? Or will they give us like a measly 1 or 2%, or something like that? And is there any oversight to that? I mean, does anybody out there watch them and say, hey, the last time crude went up this high, how come the price was so much cheaper at the pump? And are you gouging us? Is there any oversight on that? I mean, does anybody watch them to see if they're actually, if they're gouging us or not? That's what I want to know, It's a question I'm asking. Okay, bonds and rates today. We're looking at a large, very large drop in yields today. So, investors out there, there's two things probably causing this. One is investors, probably one of the places that they're running right now, too, is bonds. And it doesn't surprise me because yields are getting up kind of high, And they look at it, the way they look at it is a very good safe haven investment, bonds and treasuries. So they run to the debt market, And I can understand them because investors are very short-sighted. They just want to move their money into what they consider to be the best place for the money to go. And also, we've got the Fed in there, and gosh knows what the Fed might be doing to help this along. And I just don't know which is the biggest mover on this, but we're seeing big movements today to the downside on these yields. So which one's moving it the most? Is it the Fed or is it investors? Either way, we're seeing big movements today of like 15 basis points. So 10 years at 3.15 and the U.S. 30 years at 3.25. I suspect the Fed's got their hand in there somehow or another. U.S. dollar is at 104.19. Listen, thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe. I really appreciate my viewers out there, and we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. Bye-bye.